In the shadowy corners of history, some mysteries linger haunting, unresolved, eternally whispering questions that refuse to be silenced. Among these eerie enigmas is the unsettling tale of a cult that inexplicably vanished into the abyss in the 1970s. One moment they thrived under the enigmatic sway of their charismatic leader. The next, they were gone, leaving behind only ghostly echoes and a trail of chilling uncertainty. How could an entire community disappear without a single trace? Was it a dark ritual, a sinister plot, or something even more unfathomable? Tonight, we journey into the unsettling unknown, probing the dark corners of one of the 20th century's most baffling mysteries. Subscribe now to Dark Knight Chronicles TV, where the truth is stranger than fiction. Turn off the lights and brace yourself for what lies ahead. Next, join us as we set the eerie stage in Chapter 1, uncovering the origins of a mysterious cult hidden deep in the forests of Northern California. Setting the stage, the 1970s, a turbulent and transformative era, provided fertile ground for lost souls seeking meaning beyond the societal upheaval around them. In the sprawling, dense forests of Northern California, a charismatic and mysterious figure emerged, Jonathan Haze. With an enigmatic aura and persuasive charm, Haze quickly gathered devoted followers desperate for answers to life's existential questions. His magnetism drew in young idealists, disillusioned professionals, and spiritual seekers alike, all entranced by his profound promises of enlightenment and communal harmony. Together, they established the sanctuary, hidden far from civilization, an isolated refuge promising salvation from the chaos and moral decay they believed plagued society. Initially, neighbors and distant observers saw them as peculiar yet harmless, a quaint community of dreamers, yearning for peace. But beneath the serene facade lay unsettling secrets that whispered of darkness. Rumors began to circulate, describing bizarre midnight rituals and cryptic ceremonies. Strange chanting echoed through the trees, carried on the wind to nearby towns, unsettling those who heard it. Despite the whispers, the sanctuary continued to thrive, its members deeply committed to Haze's vision. They built cabins from timber, cultivated gardens, and lived communally, seemingly content within their own secluded world. Yet, as time passed, the isolation took its toll. Visitors were discouraged, and those who left the group spoke of increasingly disturbing behaviors, ritual fasting, prolonged isolation, and Haze's intensifying control. His sermons grew darker, infused with apocalyptic imagery and cryptic warnings. Followers were taught that the end was near, and only through absolute devotion could they transcend the impending doom. Still, the community flourished in numbers, even as internal tensions simmered beneath the tranquil surface. The sanctuary became an insular microcosm, governed by an increasingly erratic and authoritarian leader. Those who dared question Jonathan Haze's methods vanished silently into the night, their absence explained away as personal journeys or spiritual ascension. It was during this tense period that Jonathan Haze unveiled his ultimate revelation, an event he ominously termed the Ascension. Preparations for this event consumed the community. Supplies were gathered meticulously, rituals intensified, and followers isolated themselves further from the outside world. Letters home ceased entirely, and attempts by concerned family members to contact their loved ones went unanswered. And then, abruptly and inexplicably, silence fell over the sanctuary. No more chanting echoed through the forests, no fires burned in the clearing, and no sign of life remained. Days turned to weeks, and when authorities finally responded to mounting reports of concern, they discovered an eerie scene of complete desertion. Meals sat cold and untouched, beds neatly made as though their occupants had simply stepped away. Personal belongings remained undisturbed, yet not a single living soul was found. The commune appeared frozen in time, a haunting tableau of daily life interrupted by an unfathomable event. Investigators combed through the commune, uncovering disturbing artifacts, journals filled with cryptic symbols and prophecies of doom, strange markings etched onto walls, and evidence of rituals far darker than anyone had previously imagined. Yet, despite the mounting evidence of a hidden darkness, the whereabouts of Jonathan Haze and his followers remained a profound mystery. This was just the beginning of the enigma surrounding the sanctuary, as authorities struggled to piece together the puzzle. Darker theories emerged, each more unsettling than the last. Had the cult willingly chosen oblivion, or was their disappearance the result of something far more sinister? As the investigation unfolded, the haunting truth began to reveal itself, offering glimpses into the heart of darkness that had consumed Jonathan Haze and his devoted followers. But would it ever fully explain their sudden and inexplicable disappearance? Thus began a chilling narrative that would captivate and haunt society for decades to come. Next, venture deeper into the chilling discovery that shocked investigators to their core, as we uncover what they found in Chapter 2, Vanishing into Thin Air. When authorities arrived at the sanctuary in the summer of 1975, weeks after all communication from the group had ceased, what they encountered would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The air was still, the forest quiet, as if nature itself had recoiled from whatever had happened in that place. Birds didn't sing, leaves barely moved, despite the wind. The commune stood intact, its structures weathered but untouched. Dozens of cabins, a communal hall, gardens overgrown yet clearly once tended with love and precision. But there was not a single person. No footsteps, no signs of life, only the eerie presence of everything being left exactly as it had been. Inside the main hall, investigators found long tables set for a meal that had never been eaten. Plates of food sat rotting in silence. Candles were melted down to wax puddles. Shoes sat by doorways. Beds were made. Children's drawings still clung to the walls. It was a ghost town frozen mid-breath. There were no signs of violence, no blood, no struggle, no destruction. The eerie orderliness was disturbing in itself. Every room, every drawer, every cabinet seemed carefully arranged, as though the residents had simply stood up and walked into the forest in perfect silence. But that made no sense. Why would over 70 people, including men, women, and children, leave behind everything they owned without a word or a trace? Authorities conducted an initial sweep of the area, hoping to find any sign of where the cult might have gone. They deployed search dogs, thermal imaging helicopters, and hundreds of volunteers. The search extended in every direction for over 10 miles. Not a single footprint, torn piece of fabric, or trail was discovered. More unsettling were the strange symbols painted on the walls inside several buildings. They were unlike anything linguists had seen: circles within circles, twisted runes, and geometric spirals etched in ash, wax, and blood. One particularly large symbol was found under the altar of the main meeting hall, stretching nearly 8 feet in diameter and composed of hundreds of small handprints. Experts were brought in to decipher what these could mean. Some likened the glyphs to ancient Mesopotamian sigils, others to indigenous tribal markings. But there was no consensus. One anthropologist noted that the arrangement of the symbols seemed ritualistic, possibly a language of their own creation. If so, what were they trying to communicate or summon? Then there were the recordings. Dozens of tapes discovered in a locked cabinet revealed the inner workings of the sanctuary's final days. Jonathan Haze's voice remained eerily calm, but had taken on a prophetic tone. "The veil is almost open," he said on one tape, recorded just days before the group vanished. "We are ready to pass through. This is not the end. This is the beginning." In another recording, background chanting could be heard low, rhythmic, and hypnotic. Experts ran audio analysis and concluded that the chanting included frequencies outside the normal human vocal range. Some even suggested that it wasn't all human voices on the tape. Investigators also found drawings by children, disturbing images of shadowy figures standing at the edge of the forest, or tall silhouettes with glowing eyes watching the commune from a distance. One drawing showed the entire group walking hand in hand into a glowing crack in the earth. Paranoia began to seep into the investigation. Some officers reported experiencing vivid nightmares after visiting the site. One agent abruptly quit after claiming he saw people walking through the woods at night, silent figures that vanished when approached. Another claimed to have seen strange lights hovering above the forest line. Then came the final piece of evidence, perhaps the most disturbing: a single reel of 8mm film, hidden beneath a floorboard in Haze's personal cabin. The film showed the community during what appeared to be a ceremonial gathering. At first, it seemed normal: music, dancing, people dressed in white. But then the footage turns real, the image distorted, faces blurred. And naturally, the camera caught a figure in the trees, tall and unmoving, watching. The film ended abruptly as the frame burned to white. Experts said the film had not deteriorated with age. The burn looked intentional, as though someone had stopped it from showing what came next. In the weeks that followed, Rumors spread across the country. Conspiracy theorists claimed it was a mass alien abduction. Others believed Haze had led his people into a mass suicide, but there were no bodies, no evidence. Some believed it was a government experiment gone wrong. Others believed something far older, far darker, had awakened in that forest. What was left behind was more than mystery. It was dread, a sense that something in those woods was watching, waiting. A feeling that the sanctuary had not simply disappeared, but had crossed into a place we were never meant to follow. And so, the question remained, where did they go? How could so many people vanish so completely? The answers lay buried beneath layers of secrecy, silence, and shadows. Theories and dark speculations in the wake of the sanctuary's disappearance. Speculation exploded, with no evidence of where the cult had gone or how they had vanished. The vacuum of truth was filled by a storm of theories, each one darker and more disturbing than the last. The first theory was the simplest: mass suicide. Cults throughout history have met tragic ends through coordinated death, often driven by a shared belief in ascension or transcendence. Yet this theory faltered under scrutiny. No bodies were found, no traces of mass poisoning, no burial sites, no blood. The location had been combed repeatedly by teams of forensic experts, dogs, drones, and specialists. The idea that over 70 individuals could die and simply disappear defied every known forensic principle. Then there was the theory that Jonathan Haze had led them into hiding, a secret underground passage, a cave system, perhaps an off-the-grid location deep in the forest. But again, extensive searches yielded no signs, not a single trail, campfire remnant, or supply cache. If they'd gone somewhere, they left no physical trail. Not even the scent of human passage remained. Some theorists believe Haze had orchestrated an elaborate hoax a long con, that he had brainwashed his followers, staged their disappearance, and escaped with them to an undisclosed location, perhaps even under new identities. Yet not a single person from the commune had ever resurfaced. No sightings, no records, not a fingerprint in any system. It was as if they had been erased. Then came the more esoteric theories. The idea that the rituals performed at the sanctuary were not symbolic but functional, that the chants, symbols, and ceremonies were meant to open something, a door, a gateway, a tear in the fabric of reality. Fringe academics and occult researchers pored over the recovered journals and audio tapes, claiming references to celestial alignments, ancient energies, and an entity known only as the Observer. One recurring symbol was of a figure with no face, surrounded by concentric circles, standing atop a mountain. In one journal, Haze had written, "On the third blood moon, we will be judged. The Observer will see if we are worthy. If we are, we will ascend. If we are not, we will dissolve." Many dismissed this as delusional rambling, but others pointed out that the sanctuary's disappearance coincided almost exactly with a rare astronomical event, a total lunar eclipse, followed by a meteor shower. And according to one recovered calendar found in the commune, the night had been marked in red ink, with a single word beside it: passage. Some theorists took a different route altogether. They argued that the entire commune had been the subject of a government experiment, that the sanctuary had been established under the watch of a shadow agency, possibly as a psychological or sociological experiment in mind control. The symbols, programming tools, the recordings, audio triggers, the disappearance, a cleanup operation. Supporting this theory were reports of unmarked helicopters spotted in the area. During the weeks after the disappearance, one hiker claimed to have seen men in hazmat suits loading large containers into black trucks near the edge of the forest. The report was dismissed by authorities, but those close to the case noted that certain files had gone missing from the county archive. Shortly after the investigation was closed, then came the UFO community. The location of the sanctuary, its remoteness, its proximity to other known sightings caught their attention quickly. The strange lights in the sky that residents reported, the audio frequencies outside the human range, the mention of the veil in Haze's tapes. Some pointed to parallels with other mass disappearances throughout history, like the infamous Roanoke colony, suggesting that this may be part of a larger pattern of abductions or dimensional crossings. They cited the children's drawings, the burned film reel, the unexplainable sounds recorded during night watches at the site, even government documents obtained through FOIA requests. referenced anomalous readings in the areas surrounding the sanctuary. Those specifics were heavily redacted. Skeptics, of course, offered their own takes. Mass hysteria, collective delusion, perhaps a tragic accident during a ritual gone wrong, followed by natural decomposition and the work of scavengers obscuring the evidence. But even they couldn't explain the complete absence of remains or the bizarre electromagnetic readings picked up around the site that disrupted radio, GPS, and even drone function. Over the years, journalists, independent investigators, and curiosity seekers have ventured into the woods. Some came back with stories of whispers in the trees, sightings of pale figures watching from a distance, even phantom voices calling them by name. Others never came back at all. The sanctuary had become a modern myth. But unlike myths of old, it was tethered to evidence, photographs, recordings, documents, and the very real absence of 70 souls. One former FBI agent who worked on the case, now in his 80s, gave a final interview before disappearing himself. In it, he said, "I've seen things in my career that haunt me. But that place, the sanctuary, something happened there that we don't have words for. Something crossed over or something crossed in." And so, the theories persist, each one adding another layer of shadow to an already pitch-black mystery. Was it mass delusion? A government cover-up? Alien abduction? Interdimensional migration? Or something far older than all of those things? One thing is certain: whatever happened in the forests of Northern California in the summer of 1975, it was not ordinary. It was not explainable. And it is far from over. The search continues, years turned into decades. But the haunting silence of the sanctuary refused to fade. What remained was an open wound in the annals of American mystery, a puzzle that mocked investigators with its impossible lack of answers. Yet as technology evolved, so did the tools used to probe the truth. The case of the sanctuary was never truly closed. It merely shifted into the shadows. By the late 1990s, a group of independent researchers known as the Night Watch Initiative had taken up the mantle. Formed by former FBI agents, archaeologists, and fringe scientists, they sought to apply modern science to an old horror. Armed with LiDAR scans, thermal imaging drones, and satellite overlays, they launched a new kind of investigation, one not limited by politics or red tape. Their first breakthrough came in the form of underground anomalies. Subsurface imaging revealed unnatural formations beneath the site: structures, chambers, possibly tunnels. None had been recorded in the original blueprints or construction plans found in the sanctuary's archives. These voids appeared deliberately concealed, accessible only through paths long buried under roots and rock. Excavation began under intense secrecy. What they uncovered was both mundane and extraordinary. The hidden tunnels were reinforced with timber, inscribed with the same symbols found in the commune's buildings. They found remnants of fabric, tools, even partially burned manuscripts, but no signs of where the people had gone. No bodies, no graves, just absence. One tunnel ended abruptly at a cavern wall, but investigators noted that the wall was unnatural to smooth, slightly warm to the touch, and faintly vibrating. Samples were taken, but no known material matched its composition. It wasn't rock, it wasn't wood, it wasn't synthetic, it was something else. Then the equipment began to fail. Cameras would shut off randomly. GPS devices lost signal. Drones crashed or vanished completely. Radiation levels, usually negligible in forested terrain, would spike unpredictably. One technician suffered seizures after prolonged exposure to one chamber. The team began to rotate out every 30 minutes. Some refused to return. Audio devices recorded faint whispers, sometimes names, sometimes cries, sometimes something resembling laughter. When reversed, some of the audio seemed to form patterns, not language exactly, but intention, as though the sound itself had meaning, but not in any human sense. Then, a discovery chilled the team to its core. Deep within one of the side tunnels, they found a journal. It was old, brittle, handwritten in Jonathan Haze's unmistakable scrawl. The final entry read, "We found the door. It waits. It speaks in dreams now. The children hear it clearest. The veil is not to be pierced. But we were invited. The observer watches. We must answer." After this discovery, the Night Watch team requested federal oversight. But within a month, the site was shut down. Military vehicles arrived, Tents were erected. Access was denied. All research was confiscated. The Night Watch initiative was disbanded. Its members disappeared from public life still. Some files leaked. Blueprints of the tunnels. Audio fragments. Photos of the smooth wall. Reports of hallucinatory episodes experienced by agents. All pointed to something deeply wrong beneath the sanctuary. Something that challenged every assumption of physics, psychology, and metaphysics. Parallel investigations continued elsewhere. A Canadian university's linguistics department analyzed the symbols and proposed that they weren't written language at all, but visual representations of sound frequencies. When mapped, they match harmonic structures theorized in fringe physics to open quantum fields or dimensional rifts. A physicist named Dr. Lena Okoye theorized that the sanctuary had stumbled upon an intersection point, a convergence of space, time, and consciousness, a location where reality thinned, allowing something else to slip through, or for something human to slip away. In 2013, satellite imaging captured a sudden, inexplicable heat bloom at the site of the sanctuary. It lasted exactly 6 minutes. The shape of the bloom, when rendered visually, mirrored the largest symbol found under the commune's main hall. Afterward, several locals reported strange dreams of standing at the edge of a vast black ocean, of hearing a voice with no mouth, of being called by name from within the trees. One logger quit his job after seeing a line of pale figures standing shoulder to shoulder in the fog. Watching him, he swore they were wearing white robes. Despite all this, official statements remain unchanged. The sanctuary remains a closed case. No criminal activity detected. No bodies. No further comment. But those who've studied the case really studied it know that something continues beneath the trees. That the search isn't over. That perhaps it never will be. Not until the veil thins again. Not until another door opens. Legacy and cultural impact. Nearly 5 decades have passed since the sanctuary vanished from the face of the earth, but its legacy has only grown more potent with time. What began as a local curiosity has transformed into a global enigma, cultural mythos stitched together by fragments of truth, fear, and the aching hunger for understanding the impossible. The story of the sanctuary has inspired countless documentaries, novels, podcast series, fictional adaptations, and psychological studies. It's been referenced in everything from obscure horror films to academic journals. Writers, musicians, and visual artists have attempted to capture its real essence, each interpreting the haunting disappearance through their own creative lens. In literature, the sanctuary has been reimagined as a metaphor for spiritual surrender, for society's hunger for belonging, and for the dangers of blind faith. Jonathan Haze himself has become a symbol equal parts prophet, madman, and victim. Some portray him as a misunderstood mystic, others a manipulative cult leader driven by ego and delusion. The truth may be far stranger than either. In psychology, the events have been used as case studies on groupthink, mass psychosis, and the pliability of belief. University courses dissect the known details of the case, examining how intelligent, rational individuals can be drawn into communal delusion. But even the most grounded academics admit something about the sanctuary defies normal categorization. In popular culture, the imagery of the cult has become iconic. White robes, concentric symbols, and glowing forests now populate modern horror aesthetics. Television series have used sanctuary-style disappearances as plot devices. Some even speculate that newer fictional cults in mainstream media are loosely based on the real events of 1975. Paranormal communities consider the sanctuary sacred ground. Annual pilgrimages take place to the edge of the forest, where believers conduct vigils under the blood moon. They chant the known phrases from Haze's tapes, claiming to feel the thinning of the veil. To them, the sanctuary was not a tragedy, but a transformation. Skeptics remain, of course. Some insist that the mystery persists only because of gaps in record keeping and the internet's ability to mythologize. That every eerie symbol, every unexplained tape, every whisper of the wind has been dramatized into legend. But those who have been there, who have seen the untouched beds, the perfectly preserved meal tables, the handprints on the underground altar, they don't forget. They speak of a weight in the air, a sense of presence, something unfinished. Former FBI officials have admitted, off the record, that the case was unlike any other. One agent confessed, shortly before his death, that he never stopped dreaming of the sanctuary. That in his dreams, he stood in the forest, and all around him were the cult members silent, smiling, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Even law enforcement refuses to patrol the area at night. Maps mark the location as private land, closed to the public. But there's no fence, just a creeping awareness that something waits in those trees. The sanctuary, for all its silence, still speaks. Its impact is not merely artistic or academic, it is visceral. It has changed how people see isolation, devotion, and the unknown. It has challenged our understanding of disappearance and the limits of evidence. It has forced us to question how thin the line is between belief and oblivion. To this day, no bodies have been found, no definitive evidence of death, no proof of escape, only signs, symbols, echoes. What happened to the sanctuary remains an open question, but perhaps the more important question is why their story continues to resonate so deeply. Because we all fear the unknown. We all wonder what lies just beyond perception. And some of us, perhaps more than we care to admit, are drawn to it. The sanctuary endures not just as a mystery, but as a mirror, one that reflects the darkest, most curious corners of the human psyche. So if you ever find yourself walking deep in the forests of Northern California, and you feel the air shift, or hear a whisper with no source, or spot a figure just beyond your vision, don't follow it. Some mysteries are not meant to be solved. Some doors, once open, never truly close. And some stories are still being written. Thank you for joining Dark Knight Chronicles TV. Subscribe, stay vigilant, and never underestimate what secrets may lurk beneath the surface.